Welcome one and all to the Halloween edition of the Anyone But Cam Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your commissioner and one of your hosts. My name is Frankie Stein, and sitting across the internet from me is my co-host Cam. Cam, how's it going?
Dude, I'm terrified right now. Not from your, amazing introduction, but from just the disappointment I have on my fantasy team. But we'll get to that later.
We will. One person's disappointment is another person's treasure, or something like that. We'll get right into it. So we'll start off with some housekeeping, our usual waiver discussion, and for the last time, we will talk about the buy-in.
Hopefully.
Lord. Then we will go into our usual weekly rewind, do a quick power rankings, Halloween themed, of course. We'll go into a segment doing some horror comparisons. We're going to be comparing your guys' managerial styles and teams to classic horror characters, villains, heroes, movies. So stay tuned for that.
All
then we'll
classics.
have our matchup of the week. Yeah, all classics. Then we'll do our matchup of the week. We'll talk about the games from this coming week, and then we'll wrap up with a mailbag section. How's that sound to you, Cam?
I'm excited. It's going to be a good show.
Alrighty, so we'll start off with housekeeping, and we'll talk a little bit about waivers. The headline thing for me was when you just barely snagged Ryan Fitzpatrick from the clutches of Devin.
Get sniped.
$17 each, so I'm guessing that then you just won because you had higher priority. Goes to show that can be a very valuable thing, although it is unlikely that this will happen too many more times that two people bid the exact same amount of money, especially a specific amount like $17. But how pumped are you that you got the Fitzmagic going forward?
It feels good, mostly because Devin's been big smack talker recently for reasons unknown to me. He's going to lose this week probably. But, he's been trying to psych me out of getting my quarterback choices. He outbid me for Deshaun Watson. I bid 22, he bid 38, which, I don't know how much that helped him with Carson Wentz. Maybe it's just wasting his fab to try and get one over on me. But I think I may have gotten the better quarterback of this deal anyway.
Yeah, very much so. I've been noticing, there's a lot more... a little bit more animosity recently. People are getting fired up. We're just inching closer and closer to playoffs, but especially people like Devin have really been going at it recently. I like it. And so my other takeaway from your side is that you have $13 of fab left. It's interesting to see that the team, who I guess you actually lost your scoring title this week. Dylan has now scored 2 more points overall than you, but someone who had the scoring title all season now has the least amount of fab in the league. You would think that somebody who's had players who've done really well since the draft would have a bit more fab, but you went hard this week and in the previous several weeks too.
Yeah, I have been noticing a bit of a downtrend in my team's performance recently. Want to make sure that my entire team knows that nobody's job is safe. We're going to keep working to make this team as good as possible. And then since I have been working hard on waivers recently, my fab has been lower than a lot of people, so I know I'm not going to be able to afford any big ticket items that are going to come up later in the season. So I figure I'm just going to try and spend big now and just set myself up well and just hope that I can ride that through.
Yeah, right. Other big takeaways here. Justin spends $33 on Devontae Parker, $30 more than the second place bidder, which was you. It's $30 of waste, or I guess $29 of waste technically. Hopefully that works out for Devin. And then another big spender, JP, $37 for the Dallas Cowboys defense, which has been fine. They've been good. And which is as well $33 above the next highest bid of Devin at $3. So we got some big spenders this week. And then one thing I noticed on the waivers that I actually really liked was that Justin picked up Josh Rosen, who now has Byron Leftwich, Steelers legend, as his offensive coordinator, and we saw how that could get going this week with a lot more targets, with a ton of targets to Christian Kirk and Larry, which I'll talk about later for sure. But he is on bye this week. The Ravens are on. I'm not sorry. The Ravens. The other bird team, the Cardinals, are on bye, and so he'll be stashing him for the week after, which is I think a really good idea because he does have Kansas City that week. So and they do have a very exploitable secondary. But I think that can be a really good play next week. I'm proud of you, Logan, for looking ahead. Not a lot of people tend to do that in our league.
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins has his bye that week, so Logan's definitely, planning ahead, getting a quarterback for super cheap who might actually cost him money next week. Smart move.
Very much so. Do you have any other takeaways?
One last thing is I ended up getting Jack Doyle for $23, who, had the most reps at tight end for the Colts this last week, which we've seen from Ebron is, pretty good for fantasy. And I was really expecting him to, be a big ticket item in the league because tight ends suck so bad. But no one else bid on him, so that was a mistake on my part, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like it. I ended up coming away with a tight end myself. I bid $3 on Ed Dixon, who you bid $0 on. So you were targeting two different tight ends this week. It's very interesting.
Yeah, wasn't expecting to get Doyle.
Yeah. Alrighty. And so to finish up our little housekeeping section, we're going to talk real quickly about the buy-in. We had another poll. The poll says $10 was the choice. It frustrates me to no end that it was at one point voted and decided on, and then people decided to just be annoying. But Cam, Tyler, Jake, and Dylan, I owe you all $10, so hold me to that if I don't pay you in the next day. Everyone else owes me $10 still. On the pinned post in the main sleeper chat, I do have a wall of shame for people who haven't paid me yet. And yeah, anyways, we're done. Buy-in is done. We're good. Alrighty. Weekly rewinds. We're going to get right into our weekly rewinds. And as always, we will start with what we chose as the matchup of the week for last week, and we chose Tyler versus Levi, which ended up being, I believe, the closest match of the week, and quite a barn burner. Although there was one that was maybe a bit more exciting towards the end. But yeah, Levi gets a very important win, considering if he wants to win that division title, get that first round bye potentially. He will need to keep up pace with Dylan, which is what he did this week. So some takeaways from Levi's side is that Cam Newton, we talked about a little bit last week, just been amazing this whole season. Yeah, the usual producers produced DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce. But a takeaway here is that the injuries are really starting to stack up on Levi's end. He's had quite a few over the course of the season, and then just this week, I believe another rib injury, or maybe the same rib injury for Chris Thompson, compounded with maybe a knee injury as well. And then also Will Fuller placed on IR for torn ligaments. That's not what you'd like to see, but he was able to get a good week out of Will Fuller this week, so it's not like it ruined him. But he's going to be looking for a little bit more wide receiver depth going forward. Thankfully for him, he does have Chris Godwin, who did perform much better in the early part of the season with Fitzpatrick as his quarterback. So that's something he can definitely look forward to. And then looking over quickly to Tyler's side, we have TJ Yeldon had 7 receptions this game off of 9 targets, which is great. I mean, he was, essentially, invisible in the ground game, but it's good to see that he has that PPR floor. My question is, it's very possible that Fournette is back after the bye to play Indianapolis, so we'll see what his value is. Also with Carlos Hyde in town. So this could be, Yeldon's last really good game for the season. I mean, it was only 12.5 points, but still, decent enough. And then other things here to look at is we saw yesterday with the Ty Montgomery trade to the Ravens. Tyler does have Ty, so we'll see how that plans out. And then watching the Steeler game versus the Cleveland Browns this week, man, Nick Chubb surely passes the eye test. 18 carries, 56 yards, not amazing production, not too much in the passing game either. But that offense just didn't as we saw this week with the firings in Cleveland, they didn't have much going for them the past 5 weeks or so. So we'll see how that changes going forward. But if anything, Chubb definitely passes the eye test, and I can definitely see him being a very good player the rest of the season and in the next few years as well.
Yeah, a lot of implications with this game. Tyler almost pulled off the win, but he's still sitting at the bottom of the Alphas division at 3-5, I think, which is not going to be good looking at his playoff chances. However, his team is super solid, putting up 115 points without even having Julio Jones. I would not be surprised if we saw him make a run at this end of the season.
Yeah, it was funny earlier this week when Tyler changed his name. It was like, he scores lots of points, but every time he does, someone's going to score just a little bit more. This was, I forgot to mention at the top, this was our highest average scoring average scoring week of the season at 115.525 points, eclipsing week 6 at 115.23. So, yeah, this is just a lot. You had to score a lot of points this week to win, as we saw with a couple of these matchups. Alrighty, moving along, we have Devin versus JP. Devin securing another win, staying in competition in the Alphas, and JP doing what the studs and stoners do, and that is lose. On Devin's side, Kerryon Johnson was ineffective on the ground, but had some good PPR viability in the passing game, which is good to see. I think Kerryon will continue to be really good rest of the season, although looking at his schedule, he's playing some rather tough running defenses later for the rest of the season, so we'll see how that goes. Definitely a keeper candidate for next year, though. And then a bit of a quiet game for Alshon, but if you watched the game, the early morning London game, I saw some replays of Wentz went to him on the clutch third down and two different clutch third down and long plays. So it's good. It's good to always see that kind of connection with your quarterback. And then we talked a little bit last week. I said obviously you can't expect Marlon Mack to score 30 points every week. Well, he scored 28 points this week. So and he does have his bye. He has the bye, and then following up with Jacksonville and Tennessee, two of the better run defenses in the league. So we'll see that going forward. But I think Marlon Mack is absolutely a weekly starter going forward, at least at this point.
Yeah, Devin's definitely got one of the deeper teams in the league, with Jordan Howard and Nelson Aguilar, Kenny Golladay sitting on his bench, who could start for a lot of different teams out there. But Todd Gurley, man, just 30 points basically guaranteed each week. He's too good. I don't know.
Yeah. Looking over to JP's side, David Johnson had a fine week. He's been an overall pretty good asset so far this season. A bit disappointing from what JP was hoping, especially considering he kept him all of last season on his bench before we even had IR slots. But this is the second week in a row, I think actually second time this week, that he's been evaluated for concussion, which is never a trend you want to see with any of your players, especially not a running back who spends most of his time running up the middle. And then little other takeaways, but a down week overall for that Patriots offense, which is not what people were wanting to see, but I think could be kind of expected. The Patriots never play particularly well in Buffalo, regardless of how good they are. I mean, we saw a couple years ago, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, they lost in Buffalo. I mean, Brady was injured that game and didn't play, but it's definitely not a guaranteed win, and the Buffalo played them tight pretty much the whole game. So Gronk had another down week. Gronk's been, I feel like you can't say otherwise. He's been very disappointing this season. He's been fine, but he's been not worth his draft capital at all. And my other big takeaway from JP's side is that he does have Deshaun Jackson, and Deshaun Jackson was electric earlier this season with Fitzmagic in the backfield, and Fitzmagic will be starting this next game, as was confirmed. So I like that to be a very startable player next week for JP.
Yeah, I saw a stat earlier today that was Deshaun Jackson has 22 targets from both Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he's caught 18 of those from Fitzpatrick and only 8 from Jameis. So that could definitely be solid for JP going through. He's got a lot of wide receivers who could start for him. Jordy Nelson, who just lost Amari Cooper. Julian Edelman's been solid. Emmanuel Sanders just lost Demaryius Thomas. And then also Deshaun Jackson and Tyler Lockett on his bench. That's a lot of people that you got to decide between.
Yeah. Alrighty, moving on. We have Lassie versus Justin. Justin also securing a win, trying to stay alive in Rotlack. We'll see if he can continue to do that. But we will start on the Lassie side. Lassie, Drew Brees was mostly shut down, which is to be kind of expected considering he was playing Minnesota. He does have the Rams this week, which isn't a fun matchup either for him. So maybe he might be looking other ways for a quarterback. I'm trying to see, did he take a quarterback this week in waivers? He did not. Okay, so we'll see if he decides to pick up someone later in the week or not. And then other things from Lassie's side is, Golden Tate was just traded from your Detroit Lions camp to the Philadelphia Eagles. Mm-hmm. So I'll have to keep an eye on that to see if his connection with Wentz will be as good as his connection was these years with Matthew Stafford. How did you feel about that trade overall, just like on an NFL level or like a fan level?
Like, don't get me wrong, Golden Tate is like an amazing football player, awesome person, and I love like watching him play for the Lions. Mm-hmm. So it hurt a lot to see him leave, but I understand like the football reason for doing it because we're probably not going to be able to pay him when his contract ends at the end of the season. So getting a third-round pick for like 8 games of not having Golden Tate in a season that probably won't amount to anything anyway. It's smart football move, but definitely going to miss him. Unfortunately for Lassie, however, I don't know how well he'll do going to Philadelphia because he obviously competed for targets in Detroit with their 3 good wide receivers. But in Philadelphia, they got 3 good wide receivers now too with Golden Tate, Alshon, and Nelson Aguilar, but also Zach Ertz, who's just a target hog at tight end. So I don't know if Tate will have as much of the target volume there to be able to produce as well.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting situation to monitor going forward. Alrighty, and then my other takeaways from Lassie's side is that Aaron Jones finally saw the production I thought he was going to see about 3 weeks ago when I tried to trade for him. And he took advantage of that, 15.6 points, 86 yards off 12 carries against that Rams defense in a very exciting game. That was a great game.
Yeah.
Gets that touchdown as well, and then 2 for 2 receptions. That's love to see that if I am Lassie, who I think at this point it's safe to say that Lassie's season is pretty much over, at least as it goes playoff wise. So he'll be looking to play spoiler like we talked a lot about last week with Greg. He does have Levi this week, so we'll see how that goes. And then looking over to the Justin side of the ball, McCaffrey had a fine day overall. Puts up about almost 20 points, but it was really saved by the 2 touchdowns. 14 carries, 45 yards, not exactly amazing. But what was really amazing is Joe Mixon, who was one of the better running backs this week overall. 123 yards, 2 touchdowns in that game where they just, went up big and early on the Buccaneers and forced them to put in Fitzpatrick. So I like to see Joe Mixon. As we've kind of seen this season, he's been a little bit up and down, but he's pretty much feasted on defense as he's supposed to and played fine against defense he's not supposed to, which is good because, you can tell which weeks to start him and which weeks not to. Mm-hmm. Another quiet week for T.Y. Hilton, who's been dealing with that groin injury or hamstring injury, whichever one it is, for a while now. And as we've seen over many years past, especially with wide receivers, is that hamstring injuries that start early in the season, I believe this one started like week 5 or something, week 4 maybe, they tend to last, and so far it has lasted at least until now. So we'll see if we can finally get that right soon. And then, another great week, 3rd week in a row for Latavius Murray filling in for Dalvin Cook on that Vikings defense. Now he's looking to get a PPR floor as well, which has never really super been a part of Latavius Murray's game. He's always been a good, check down guy, but he's never been one to really go on too many routes. But 5 for 6 receptions for another 40 yards. You always love to see that. Yeah, and I guess maybe his stats are slightly inflated because this is his third week in a row with a touchdown. But I like to see him do well this week against a very exploitable Detroit run defense.
Yeah, Latavius Murray has definitely come out as one of the clutchest waiver pickups so far this season for Justin. He's been just solid for the last 3 weeks. We'll see if he can keep that up, maybe pushing for some timeshare work when Dalvin Cook comes back, if he ever can get healthy. But Justin's definitely got to figure out that wide receiver 2 spot if he wants to compete on the stretch of the season. Devin Funchess on his bench only got 4.2 points. T.Y. Hilton, 3.9. And with the buys he has this week, we got to hope that he can figure that out somehow.
Yeah, very much so. Alrighty, moving on now. We'll go into Jake versus Logan. This was the more exciting one I was referring to either, where Jake was down a few points going into the Patriots-Bills game. The defense ends up coming through for him. 18 points. Yeah, you love to see that if you're Jake. Gets a win, which I very much appreciated because I love to see the studs and stoners lose who aren't known to me. But looking over to Jake's side, Mike Evans had a good day, but most pretty much all came in the second half with Fitzpatrick, which is what we saw this season, where Mike Evans was amazing to start the season and has fell off ever since Winston came back. But now Fitz is back. We'll see how that continues to go. Adrian Peterson just feasted on the Giants. They wore them out until he could bust up that big run later in the second half. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it's kind of an interesting to think like the Redskins are like definitely a contender in the NFC East, and so I like them to be. And I say that because I like them to be like involved in a lot of these games instead of like playing behind, which they've been doing a lot the last few years. But Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Houston, I feel like they can. Those are all pretty winnable games. Houston will be tough, but the next two games are very winnable. I like to see Adrian Peterson continue to give them that running floor, which I know that's what we like to see there. And then my other thing to note here for Jake specifically is that he did get this clutch win on Ezekiel Elliott's bye, which is something like you can't ask for anything better than that. 137 points with your best player on bye. Yeah, that's very impressive. And then looking over to Logan's side, we talked a bit about last week about Bilal Powell's injury, and how that affects me personally, but maybe I didn't talk enough about how that affects the Jets at large as well. Because Isaiah Crowell was really wanting to stretch the field, but with him out, defense is going to be able to load the box quite a bit more. So what we saw this week against Isaiah Crowell, 4.3 points against the good Chicago defense. But I still like to see more than that. Logan and I had a trade earlier, and this week, and so far I think we both benefited from it. But so far he's definitely the winner, considering I think a combined 70 points between the three of them. Good week for Kenyon Drake, whose points kind of came off of I don't want to call it fluky, but it's like a trick play from Amendola, and he played well other than that, so I don't want to take away all the credit. And 10 targets for Marvin Jones, which is way more than he saw in any game when he was on my team. Cool. The Lions were playing from behind pretty much the entire game against the Seattle defense. I picked the Lions to win that game too. I was surprised that they had such trouble at home against the Seahawks. The Seahawks have definitely been playing a lot better the last couple of weeks. And this is the third game in a row for Devontae Adams of 100+ yards, which we talked a little bit about a week or two ago, how he's kind of snuck up on me as a surprising, very solid fantasy player so far this season.
Yeah, Devontae Adams has a streak of 3 games with over 130 receiving yards, which I think
30.
is a hasn't been done in the NFL for some 20 years. He is just going insane this year as Aaron Rodgers' main target. But, Logan, after that trade, it's looking pretty solid for him right now, but none of the production has been sustained from before. So he's got to hope that they can just make this the new trend instead of just a fluke. But with all three of them performing, I think if one or two of them can just continue going, like getting a lot of production, then that trade will work out for him actually pretty well.
Yeah, it looks like it. Alrighty. Let's move on to my match this week. My match versus Greg. Can I remember last week when I talked to you about the scoring trends of my team, and the last time I scored in the top 6 of any given week was week 8 of last season, and wouldn't you know it, this was week 8 of this season. So hopefully I don't have to wait another whole year to score in the top 6, but it could happen. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings this weekend watching that Steeler game and got to witness that 70-yard touchdown reception from Tariq Cohen. That got me pumped. And I also got to watch Sammy Watkins score 2 touchdowns in the wake of the Tyreek Hill injury, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Those were very exciting to me, of course. I love that I now have Philip Lindsay on my team, a.k.a. the rich man's Alvin Kamara. But, yeah. And then my only other takeaway from my team, besides for Juju's had another downish week. I guess this is the worst week of the season. But literally every Steelers player not named James Conner was game planned out of the second half. They just gave the ball to him every single play. So yeah, whatever. Steelers win, I won. Can't be too upset. But with the trade of Demaryius Thomas off of the Broncos onto the Houston Texans, that affects the viability for me in terms of it's a bit of a downgrade for Kiki Kuti probably, but it's an upgrade for Cortland Sutton. So I guess I end up feeling both sides of that trade. Looking over to Greg's side, Jalen Ramsey did nothing on the ground this week, which is whatever. It's Oakland. They suck. But he does have a little bit of PPR floor, which is what we saw with a good amount of targets to him. So I think he's still a startable asset going forward, in wake of the Beast injury, and considering the next best option is Doug Martin, and he's garbage. Tyler Boyd continues his hot and cold streak, and a hot week this week we saw in the first half. And a little bit in the second half, too. He did have some good receptions in the final couple drives, trying to hold off Fitzmagic. And let's see what else from Greg's side. Oh yeah, just looking forward to this next week for Greg. The Bengals are on bye, which means he won't have AJ Green or Tyler Boyd. So it's going to be a tough week to see. I want to see who he is going to start in those spots, because they've really been carrying his team so far this season.
Yeah, there's a lot to like this week for you, Frankie, with your running backs scoring, both double-digit points. And if Le'Veon Bell can actually come back anytime soon, and with Sony Michel possibly coming back from the injury soon, then your running back core could definitely be a strength for your team going forward. And
Imagine
that. You got a lot of wide receiver 2s currently sitting in like your wide receiver spot, like wide receiver 2s on their actual teams. But that isn't as bad this season with so much passing going on throughout the league. You just got to make sure you can play around when those guys are actually going to get their targets. Yep. So, who knows? Maybe you could be a contender in that pretty weak studs and stoners division right now.
I think I very much am a contender. We'll see what happens around playoff time, but alrighty. We'll talk about our last matchup of the week, which was your
No, there's no more matchups,
we'll talk
Frankie.
About
there's
it.
no more of them. I don't know what you're talking about.
Very, very appropriately for our Halloween themed episode, because this was a terrifying match to watch if you were in the Cam Van Sant corner. Winston was benched halfway through the game. Obviously, you never want to see that with your starting quarterback.
Just kind of set the tone for the week.
Yeah, especially someone that you paid a pretty penny for a couple weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
Other takeaways: Doug Baldwin is essentially the wide receiver 3 in Seattle, behind both Lockett and David Moore, in light of his injury, his knee injury, which he says himself probably won't get better until he can work on it, maybe get some off-season surgery. And then another, injury to your team, Tyreek Hill, who has a groin strain, has a fine. I mean, for a player getting injured, he had a fine week for you, 8.5 points. Not too terrible. He didn't goose you or anything, but he's looking like he's going to practice today. So that'll be good for you going forward. Looking over to Dylan's side, yeah, as I said earlier, James Conner had just they used him like Le'Veon Bell in the second half, and he produced like Le'Veon Bell in the second half. uh, Other takeaways here: Diggs, who's been a bit of a story the last couple of weeks, under 7 points the last 2 weeks, but jumps up to a better score than Adam Thielen's. Which is like whatever because they both scored like 18 and 23 points, so you can't really complain either way. But it's good to see that Diggs get that production that we all believed he should be getting. And Chris Carson did really well, as I mentioned earlier, about the very exploitable Detroit defense, or their run defense specifically. Puts up 19.4 points. It's very good for Dylan. Dylan, who's looking to take a stranglehold of the league right now, 144.42 points. Yeah, that's the second week in a row of over 140 points scored. So, yikes.
Yeah, it was real tough Sunday morning watching that Kansas City-Denver game because, Sammy Watkins, 2 touchdowns, Travis Kelce caught a touchdown, and then Kareem Hunt at least got 1 touchdown. But just seeing the production go everywhere except for the players on my team really hurt, watching it. Patrick Mahomes just keep getting those points. And then, Chris Carson, the Seahawks were ahead pretty early in that Detroit game, meaning that they just ran the ball pretty successfully with Chris Carson and didn't need to throw to Doug Baldwin. Oh boy. Yeah, but otherwise, John Brown, I really wish that he could catch a bit more than 3 out of 7 passes. I could use some production there, showing that my wide receiver 2 ain't great. It was a down week. Let's just say that and move on. How about?
All right. I was also going to give you grief about having Chris Hogan's on your team, but I now see he's finally off your roster, so that's good.
Yeah,
Alrighty. So that was our weekly rewind, and now we're going to get into a quick power ranking segment.
Vegeta, what does the scouter say about his power level? It's over 9,000! What, 9,000? There's no way that can be right!
And this Power Rankings segment is Halloween themed, of course, and I have the teams ranked in tiers, and each tier is ranked, represented by a certain type of Halloween candy. And as tradition, I will start I'll start at the top this time. I think this is what we'll do. I'll go against tradition. We'll start at the top. The top tier, number 1 tier, in my opinion, maybe the best candy in the entire world. At least top 5. It's up there. Tier 1, the Kit Kat tier. We have Dylan and Cam. Cam, we know you had that down week this week, but if we're looking over the course of the season, it's still pretty clear to me that you are one of the top contenders to win the overall league this season. And then Dylan, you have to put him up there. The last 2 weeks over 140, but he's also had weeks of week 2 142, weeks 4 and 5 over 135. Someone I just don't think anyone wants to play at any moment going forward, which is fun because I have him this week and I will beat him, and we'll talk about that later. Tier 2, we have Snickers, a very solid candy, a bit more polarizing, a lot more going on. I love the simplicity of Kit Kats, the wafer chocolate. Snickers, you got like nougat, chocolate, you got caramel, peanuts. Like, it's just a whole lot going on. But still, right, top tier if you ask me.
I can't let this go on any longer.
Okay.
This poor ranking you have going on here. And obviously I'm not talking about putting me at 2, but I'm talking about your candy takes, Frankie.
Oh, what do you mean?
I mean Snickers. Really? That is a low tier candy at best. Anything with nuts in it is just frowned upon. Why would I want a peanut in my chocolate? It's just ruining everything. Kit Kats, they're all right. I would never want a Kit Kat for myself, but if someone breaks off a piece and hands it to me, then I'll take it.
Okay. Do you feel as though maybe you're a bit biased because you do have that peanut allergy thing?
I don't have a peanut allergy. That's Justin. I just don't like peanuts.
Oh, you don't have a peanut allergy?
No, that's Justin.
All right, interesting. Moving on. Tier 3, we're going to get into, a bit, pretty average tier kind of candy. But
One sec, Frankie. I'm not sure if you ever actually said the teams in tier 2.
Oh, I never did. That's funny. I got too involved in the candy debate.
The most important part, yeah.
Tier 2, I have Levi and Devin, both teams that are performing incredibly well these past couple of weeks. Levi, who is just putting. I don't think he's had the only game he scored under 100 points was the first week. Very impressive. And Devin is 120 last week, 134 the week before, 133 this week. Just very, very impressive overall. That's the Snickers tier. Tier 3, I have the Skittles tier. Do you have any problems with this, Cam, or can I continue?
I think Skittles is appropriately placed in tier 3, yeah. Makes sense.
Okay, good. Then we have Tyler, Justin, and Jake. Jake, who I wanted to put higher, because I do think he has a really, has a pretty good team overall. Did lose Allen Robinson this week inexplicably, but bounces back from the 80-point weeks to 137 points, puts up the second highest score this week, so I gotta jump him up. But yeah, I think he belongs in that 3, maybe fringe 2 tier. But yeah, Tyler, Justin, and Jake in that one. Tier 4, this is where I start to be like, this is where what you were saying about Kit Kats, this is kind of what I feel like. Starbursts, tier 4. If somebody has them, sure. Like, I like the red one, but like the yellow one, and I guess the pink one's okay. It's like, if half the snack is good, like, you're not a top tier.
Look, am I saying Starburst is tier 1? Of course not. It's not even chocolate. But I think all Starbursts are good Starbursts, and they're happy to just pop in your mouth, suck on them a little bit, chew them. Fun candy. Tier 3, I think, is fair up there with Skittles, but I won't argue too hard with tier 4.
Okay. I have myself, JP, and Logan. We have that Studs and Stoners block, which I've been talking about pretty much all season. Put us all right in there because we're all very much contenders. I made these rankings on Monday, hoping that I could justify putting myself in this tier because Le'Veon Bell was back. But as of this recording, it's Wednesday and he still has not reported. Wow. Okay. Moving on. We're gonna go to tier 5, the bottom tier, and we might have to. This might end the podcast here, Cam, because I will go to bed and talk about blow pops. Those candy, suckers with gum in them or whatever they're called. I think they're called blow pops.
Yes, they are.
Garbage. I would rather have a Charlie Brown rock than a blow pop in my trick or treat basket. I have Greg and Lassie down there, of course. They've been kind of, patrolling this bottom tier the whole season. But I think they belong there. Blow pops are trash. What say you?
All right, Frankie. I think that your candy takes are about as good as your fantasy football ownership skills, because these are trash. Because blow pops. I have a question for you, Frankie. Can you name any candy that is really 2 candies in one? No, you can't. Blow pops are lollipop and gum. Who cares if that gum goes stale in like 5 chews and it's awful and you spit it out?
Bad.
But the blow pop flavor is delicious. It's a large candy, lasts you a while. Green apple blow pops turns your tongue green. It's excellent, and you can chew it once it gets soft enough to where you can get to that sweet gum flavor for a little bit. It's at least tier 2.
Okay, I just thought of a 2. And okay, first of all, I talked about it earlier. I like the simplicity of the Kit Kat. That's why it's great. Wafer chocolate, perfect. Okay, the caramel apple pop. That's 2 candies in one. That's way better than a blow pop. Not even close.
That's fair.
Not even close.
Caramel apple pop is tier 1.
Yeah,
I stole one of those from Winco.
I didn't even think about. Yeah, I didn't even think about it as a Halloween candy, but it definitely is. Okay. Hopefully you guys got what the power rankings were this week, because I didn't.
Yeah, we're going more off the rails with this next segment too.
Alrighty. I'm looking forward to this one for literally 2 weeks now. This segment is good. We're gonna do some horror comparisons. Bum 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 bum. And we're gonna do some comparisons. I'm gonna talk about owners and teams and do some classic horror movies, characters, heroes, villains. And we're gonna do some comparisons. We're gonna talk about how you all are similar to these people. And I'm going to do it alphabetically just because that's how my spreadsheet is laid out. So I just copy pasted. But we'll start with Cam. Then, Cam, I have your horror comparison as Count Dracula. Now, before I tell you why, do you have any guesses as to why I consider you to be like a Count Dracula type?
I mean, Dracula's the classic villain, right? Everyone knows Dracula. Dracula's awesome. He's the best villain. No one can kill Dracula because he's a Dracula. Yeah, it makes sense. I'm the best.
Well, not quite. A little bit. But to me, Dracula is someone who, in his element, is unstoppable. When things are going his way, it's just a steamroll. But the second, when a couple injuries pop up or the sun comes out, it all crumbles. He's got nothing. He's got, easily seen weaknesses. You got the steaks, you got the garlic. And yeah, there's always somebody knocking him down. But Dracula does always come back, whether for the next season, aka the next century or whatever. He keeps coming back. He's always a nuisance. He's always a pain in your side. And we're all cursed to play you every season. That's kind of what I'm going with.
I can dig it.
Alrighty. Next up, alphabetically, we have Devin. And Devin, I have his comparison as Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, specifically the first movie.
Not the one with Alexandra Daddario?
I never saw that one, actually. But the first one is, I have him as that because Leatherface isn't particularly creative, especially considering, compared to a lot of other horror movies. You kind of know what you're getting with him. Which is you're going to get the Eagles offense every season with him. But still, he's deadly. He's scary. Once he has you in the house full of all the cannibals, he can tear you apart. And he's going to do it brutally with no remorse for your team, as we saw this week with how brutal some of these people, especially Devin, can be in the league in terms of smack talk. That's why I have him as a Leatherface type.
All right. Makes sense to me.
Alrighty. Next up, we have Dylan. And Dylan, this is a little bit of my choir nerd side coming out, but I do have him as the Phantom, from the Phantom of the Opera, of course. Now, of course. So, I have Dylan as the Phantom because, the mask that's put up when the mask is on, he's terrifying. He's somewhat mystical. He owns the area that he belongs in. But once that mask is taken off, it's hideous. Once you take a look at Dylan's bench, it's hideous, man. It's especially we looked at last week, he was forced to start people like Doug Martin. It's just once he's in when he's in his elements, you're trolling people behind the opera. People are scared, and he has the ability to be really strong, like we've seen this season every week. But once that mask is taken off, or gets just a little distracted with a girl, perhaps, maybe, it's game over for the Phantom.
All right. Sounds like Dylan, trying to sing his way to victory.
Yeah. All right. And then next up, alphabetically, we have myself. And I have myself pegged as the Dr. Loomis type. Now, for those of you who don't know who Dr. Loomis is, he is Michael Myers' doctor from the Halloween series. Specifically, I'm looking at the first Halloween. And it's because I do the podcast is the reason why I'm talking about this. I give myself this because Dr. Loomis literally spends the entire movie just talking about how what pure evil is and how evil Michael Myers is. I feel like all I do is talk about how good everyone else's team is besides for mine.
Yeah.
And how much that hurts me. So that's why I have myself as a Dr. Loomis type.
Maybe you'll get to step in and start being one of those evils you can talk about yourself, Frankie.
Yeah. Next up, we have Greg, and you had Greg.
Yeah, and I called Greg the birds from the movie Birdemic because,
Classic.
Greg, he doesn't do a lot. He just kind of sits there flapping his wings, not super active in the
Aw.
waivers. Birdemic birds can be killed by a lot of things. Hangers, shower rods, naked girls. So Greg obviously hasn't got a lot of wins on this season. So he's been taken down a lot. Yeah. He's no jumbo giant jellyfish, that's for sure.
Definitely not.
All right, and next I picked Jake Logan, and he is the dinosaurs from Jurassic World. Because, before Jurassic World came out, you were like, oh my god, this has, Star-Lord, and it's Jurassic Park movies. Maybe this will be awesome and scary again. But then you go and see it, and you get the stupid kids in those rolly balls, and I don't know, he can talk to dinosaurs now. It's just super disappointing. Just like Jake's team started out super solid, scoring a lot of points. People thought he was a true alpha contender, but now we know he's just a soy boy beta Jurassic World 2.
Do you remember that scene with the rolly balls in Jurassic World where they spend like 15 minutes watching Jimmy Fallon?
Yeah.
How did that movie get made?
It made money, right?
How do people like that movie? Oh my god. All right. Next up, I had JP, and I have JP marked as RJ McReady, or McReady. I think it says, I forget how to say his name. Mac from The Thing, John Carpenter's 1983 The Thing, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Maybe my favorite. I don't know. Either that or Halloween, probably. But I have JP as Mac because mostly because of the opening like character introduction for Mac, which he makes me laugh so hard every time when he's just playing chess against the computer and the computer beats him, so he pours his whiskey drink into the computer. um, which kind of sent it to me. Jake is just kind of like, it seems like every season he's like reluctantly joins the league and just is like there, and like he like thinks he has the computer beat, but then he loses and he's just like, oh, no, I never really cared anyways, it's just dumb. So that's why I have him as Mac from The Thing.
I can dig it.
Next up, I have Justin. Justin I have pegged as Michael Myers, the classic horror icon, if you were to ask me. Now, I have Justin as Michael Myers because Justin, as a person and as a fantasy owner, is just a hard person to read. He doesn't give a lot away. Michael Myers has that mask. He doesn't speak. His intentions aren't always clear. But when he gets his mind set to something, he's one to execute. That is for sure. Once we get into that constellation time of the year, it's go time. And he knows that, just like when Michael Myers sees Laurie, he knows it's go time. And it seems like, no matter what happens to Justin, you can, stab him in the eye with a clothes hanger or shoot him off a balcony. And then, you leave him for a second, and all of a sudden he's back, ready to just upset your team any week. So that's why I have Justin as a Michael Myers type.
I think that's a good call there. And following Justin, I had Austin Lasseter, and I think that he is like the villain from the classic horror movie Scooby-Doo. He's Scrappy-Doo. Because,
the live action one.
Yeah, the live action one. It's got those spooky monsters during the beginning of the movie, and you're like, oh my god, is this actually scary? Is this a stoner horror movie? But then, you get to the end, and you just have giant Scrappy-Doo who just ends up peeing on stuff, I think. And you're like, oh, never mind, this isn't threatening at all. This is just kind of stupid. Just like Lassie's team, we're like, dang, he's got some good keepers with Josh Gordon, and he's got the second overall pick, could get Saquon Barkley. His team could be good.
Yep.
And then we get to the season, and he's sitting there, 1-6, just giant Scrappy-Doo doing nothing.
Oh. Yeah, that's good. I forgot that Scrappy gets giant at the end of that movie. That's probably like a lot of painful memories, I'll be honest. But alrighty. Next up we had Levi, and Levi, I have him pegged as Jigsaw. Jigsaw because, and this is maybe the most clearest one to me of all these comparisons, is that Jigsaw is just a puppet with the real master, doing everything behind him, and that's his brother. So I think that's just the perfect comparison.
It's lock on, Frankie. I like it. All right. Following that, I think I have a pretty good comparison here too, because I think that Logan is like Hannibal Lecter.
Ooh.
Doesn't always do the most in his movies, like Silence of the Lambs. He's not out killing a whole bunch of people, but he is a talker, mind you. He will be able to convince anyone to make any kind of trades with him. It's impressive. And, you never can turn your back on him because he could pull an upset any week, as we saw with how well his team scored this last week. And, Logan, also, no remorse for anything he does. Logan's proud of that.
I was going to say, I feel like Logan is going to be one of the only people who's going to appreciate his comparison, which I think just kind of makes it perfect.
And finally, I pegged Tyler as the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. Comparing to Jake, even though Jake has more wins on the season because Jurassic World, wildly successful, Jurassic Park is the classic. It's the one that's actually scary, and the dinosaurs are actually able to kill people like those velociraptors. Tyler's team, definitely super good. I'd say it might even be better than Jake's. I'm not sure where the power rankings had him again, but I would be more scared of Tyler's team during the end of the season than Jake Logan's team, to be honest.
Yeah, they're in the same tier. So, yeah, right next to each other.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So those are our horror comparisons. Hope you all enjoyed. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. We're going to do our, matchups of the week. Talk about a couple different matchups. Of course, we have the one matchup of the week. And then we'll start off with that one, of course. And you picked it this week, Cam. Who did you decide to go with?
Yeah, I don't think it could be any matchup besides this one, and that is Justin versus Devin. The trash talk has already started with Devin trying to bode Justin into spending too much on the waivers or something. I don't really know. But there was a lot of words flying back and forth. Shannon was brought up. Dick size was compared. Retardation was discussed. There's a lot going on here. But the matchup is also super interesting, not just the trash talk, because they both have a lot of buys going on. Devin with that entire Eagles team on bye. Justin losing Odell and Joe Mixon and T.Y. Hilton. So there's a lot of scraped together teams going on here. Devin still doesn't even have a replacement for Zach Ertz. Don't know what he's going to do there. But I think this could be a super close game. The winner of this is going to be set up better for playoffs because they're both definitely fighting for a wild card or trying to win the division. If you're Devin, there's a lot, and I think it's going to be a good one.
Hey, Devin, trade me for Tariq Cohen so you can have the better running back of Chicago. Just a little tidbit for you. A little tidbit for you. Yeah, I guess this has to be the one. A trash talk alone was enough to really put that over the top. That is interesting to see that all of the Eagles are on bye, of course. And then Marlon Mack, that we mentioned earlier, is also on bye. So he would be pretty much forced to start Jordan Howard this week, which is not a super position I'd love to be in. But, Devin does have Gurley, which, could be a week winner every single week, as we've seen.
Yeah, so who are you picking in this game, Frankie?
Oh, that's right. I have to do that. I'm going with Justin this week. I think it's very close, but I'm going to give it just barely to Justin. Did you give a pick?
Not yet, but I also think that Justin's going to win this game. Devin does have Todd Gurley, who is a beast, but New Orleans has had the best rushing defense so far this season.
Yeah. And
Kenny Golladay is up against Minnesota. Who knows if Xavier Rhodes is going to try and follow him or Marvin Jones, but it couldn't help. And then, they got the matchup of the Minnesota versus Detroit running backs, Kerryon Johnson versus Elmat. And Elmat's been doing better recently, so I think that could help put Justin over the top of big boy Devin.
Very much so. Alrighty. And I think we had note earlier was your matchup versus Dylan was for the Try Hard Chalice, which is once again up for grabs this week with Dylan versus myself.
I have to work harder. I want to excel. I want to be the greatest, so I'll keep on trying until I've got what it takes to do that.
Oh my.
Another try-hard game. I picked up Derek Carr off waivers, and I think he could be a very good asset this week, going against a very beatable San Francisco team. they are playing on Thursday night, so we'll see how that goes in very soon. Other than that, I like most of my matchups across the board for most of my players. I don't love Juju against the Baltimore defense, but he still can produce. I mean, they do. He had 8 points against them earlier this season in Pittsburgh, so not exactly something I'm super looking forward to. I might look otherwise, and I'm also looking to see this week if Sonny Michel is able to be a full participant in practice. And maybe I won't even have to start Juju, but some interesting decisions on my side. And then looking over to Dylan's side, we had the Kansas City versus the Browns. Mahomes could have some serious numbers if he wants to. Some pretty good to average to good defenses all across the board he's playing against. Let's see. Yeah, I guess another thing with Juju, James Conner would also be playing against Baltimore defense, who've had one of the better run defenses this season as well. Detroit's had a good passing defense as well, so hopefully they can do some work against those Vikings receivers he has. I guess that maybe in both of those matchups we just talked about, maybe that Detroit versus Minnesota game will decide both the matchup of the week and my matchup. What do you think?
It's funny you should bring up this game for the Try Hard Chalice, Frankie, because this is also my upset of the week.
I'm upset. Louder! I'm upset. Louder! I'm upset! Say it louder! I'm upset!
I'm picking you over Dylan here. You know, James Conner has been super solid for Dylan recently, but like you said, the Baltimore defense, I think Juju Smith-Schuster could actually put up some numbers against Baltimore if Jimmy Smith is trying to lock down Antonio Brown. It's possible. And then Patrick Mahomes with Cleveland. If, my boy, the Cheetah, is not, fully up to strength this week, then Sammy Watkins could just be the recipient of basically all of Patrick Mahomes' deeper passes, which could help you out. And then also Cleveland hasn't been super good against the run this season, so if Kansas City can get up quick, then they just run the clock out, limiting what Patrick Mahomes can put up. And lastly, George Kittle has been super solid for Dylan recently, but CJ Beathard hasn't been super healthy this week. He might not be able to start, which could hurt Dylan in that tight end position. So I think you got this.
I like it, Cam. I like it a lot. I love me to win this week because I need to continue to win. Also, in our little of the week section here that we have, only one meme this week that I saw of at least, but you made it and I appreciated it very much so. So it will be winning the Meme of the Week award.
Dude, what a rush! What a rush!
Happy feet. Wombo combo. That ain't Falco. That ain't Falco.
Yeah.
Cam, what inspired you to make that meme?
This was during the heat of the Devin versus Justin debates. And, Justin was sitting on the couch next to me, falling asleep over there. And I was like, I'm going to make a meme for this. So, I don't know, I thought it'd be cool, point out some of the differences between Devin and Justin's managerial strategies and whatnot. How Justin's very analytically driven. Devin's just kind of sitting around, rimming with Daniel. Ew. So, I thought I'd put it out there for the league.
Yeah. I appreciated it very much.
I'm honored by this award, Frankie.
Not a hard one to win, but a coveted award nonetheless. Alrighty, and so I wanted to add the segment and really quickly. I feel like we could do a little bit better talking about the matchups in the coming week. So I think we just could go really quickly. We'll do a quick pick'em of all the games this week, and we'll start with Levi versus Lassie. Levi, who at this current moment is favored 95%, but Saquon Barkley is on bye, and Lassie does not have a tight end currently, as you mentioned earlier. He has Jared Cook to sub in there, but without Saquon Barkley, I don't see a world where Lassie wins this game. So I have Levi. Who do you got?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Levi's gonna win this in a landslide.
Yeah. Alrighty. Then we have Jake versus Greg. I also have Jake winning this week. I like to see that Rams pass catchers go against that very exploitable Saints secondary. Who do you got?
Yeah, also Jake. Like Greg, he's got those ball or Cincinnati receivers on bye. I don't know if he can overcome that. Going with Jake. Also, if Greg's listening, which I'm pretty sure he won't, definitely he's got to sub in Aaron Rodgers over Matt Ryan because that Washington defense is pretty solid.
Yeah. Alrighty. Next up, we have you versus JP. Yeah, I like the Patriots have another like okay week against Green Bay, so I'm gonna go with you this matchup. Do you have any thoughts?
Like, I have the Bears defense going up against Nathan Peterman. I don't know what else I need. Come on.
Very true. Very true. And then the last matchup we'll talk about real quick is we have Tyler versus Logan. This one's a bit closer. I might end up going with Logan on this one, although I'm a little torn. What do you think?
Yeah, I honestly think that once Tyler gets his lineup all set this week, it could be one of the most interesting matchups of the week. But I think I've got to just go with my boy Tyler, because Logan lives in my house, and I'd like to see him lose.
And I'd like to see him lose too, because he's in my division. But yeah, so quick pick 'em. Just wanted to add that in as a new segment, just so we can, have something to go by as we recap next week. And now, actually, we're going to have an interview segment here. We're going to be talking to the co-commissioner, Justin Moss.
Oh boy.
We'll see, we'll take away the magic here. He's not on the show right now. We're going to do a separate interview with him and put it in. So we're going to get to cut to that right now. All right, everyone. I am here with Justin. Justin is on the mic, my co-commissioner. How's it going, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. So, Justin, you actually asked to be on the show. You weren't asked to be on. Did you have any specific reason why you wanted to be on the show this week?
Just as, a duty as co-commissioner, I feel it's important to, be a part of the league. You have to have outreach. So here we are.
Absolutely. I guess we'll just go right there. We are co-commissioners in our league this season, both of ours first years being commissioners. How has that experience been for you so far? All the controversies and the things we have to keep up with. Are you enjoying your time as commissioner? Has it been stressful? What are your thoughts overall?
I say to myself, it's fantasy football, so you're naturally going to have controversies, but it's been, I don't know, there's been bumps in the road, but for the most part, I think it's been all right, and we've done a, semi-decent job of handling everything, so I don't think that we're going to be in line to be voted out next year. So chalk that one up as a success.
I wouldn't speak too soon, but yeah, we had a lot of changes going into the season, a whole new platform, a new waiver system, a new member. This is our first official keeper draft, which the drama started even pre-draft, really.
Yeah.
With the whole Dylan situation there. But yeah, I think for the most part, things have been going relatively well, save for a couple people trying to collude here and there. But,
once again, fantasy football, right?
Yeah. So, as we are commissioners, but we are both players. We are both owners in the league. And you're sitting here 4-4, you're 4 games back from the division lead of Dylan at 8-0, easily the most dominant team in our league. And then, record-wise, second most dominant is Levi, right above you. We have one more week of playing against other teams, and then we have 3 straight weeks of division play, followed by the doubleheader. Do you think that you have a shot for division titles still, or do you think you're fighting for a wild card spot, or you're going to settle for a consolation?
Absolutely not. I think that the Rotlack division is clearly the most stacked division. Dylan has basically won the league in the regular season easily, hands down by this point. Levi also has a strong grip on the league. So I think at this point, I might be lucky to get a wild card spot, but I'm really eyeing the consolation championship at this point, just because I don't think I'm going to be able to be over 500 emerging from the second round of divisional play.
Yeah, it'll be tough. I mean, you are currently, if playoffs were to start now, you'd be the number 1 seed in consolation. You have that 7 spot. You'd lose a tiebreaker to Jake Logan. Just for points scored, you're about 40 behind or so. I still think you're right in the mix. It only takes a couple of. I think it's an important thing to remember for everyone who may be looking into these division play games, and not having a whole lot of confidence, is that we see Rotlack and the teams in alphas who score a lot of points. They're taking each other out. That's what has to happen. Just that's how the numbers work. So I don't think really anyone is out, as we've talked about quite a few times on the podcast, besides for maybe Lassie and Greg, but everyone else I think is still pretty much in contention. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your matchup this week. You versus Devin. How do you feel about your matchup this week? We got you caught Devin on the Eagles bye week, so you got to be looking at that as a favorable thing.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I'm also having the Bengals on bye, Colts on bye, and Giants. So I lose Hilton, Beckham, and Mixon. So that's 3 powerhouse players right there.
Yeah.
So I really had to buy a win this week off waivers. As it currently stands now, with Devin having no tight end and no defense, I'm only going to beat him by less than 10 points. So not looking very good.
I know that feeling personally.
Yeah.
But we saw that you made a move this week to shore up because, as you just said, you're missing your 2 wide receivers this week. You made a trade to acquire Taylor Gabriel. So I like that as a move from your end. I also like Christian McCaffrey going against a pretty exploitable Tampa Bay defense. Latavius Murray has been a stud the last 3 weeks, and Detroit has one of the worst run defenses in the league. So I definitely think you do have a shot here. And it looks like, Devin's side, has the Eagles out, which means he's forced to start Jordan Howard, who hasn't been great, but he's playing, Buffalo. It's not too terribly tough of a defense. I think a big swinging point could be Brandon Cooks on his team going against the worst pass defense in the league, or maybe I think 3rd worst maybe in New Orleans. He could definitely put up some numbers there, especially if Cooper Kupp still isn't back in the lineup. But I do think this is a close matchup, and but talking about the numbers and the players, that's all fine. That's really what fantasy is. But the question that I want to go to next is, what is fantasy really about? And the answer to me is the trash talk and the pride. And you and Devin were going at it the last couple of days. What has been going on?
Oh, certainly. I think one of the most important factors in fantasy football is entertainment value.
Uh-huh.
And so, taking some shots at Devin, I think I got the best of him. So, I figure if I can beat him in trash talk, players will follow suit.
Yeah, I mean, you held no punches back. I mean, you were going after ex-girlfriend. You were going after, I don't even remember all the shots you were giving. You were calling him some, less than PC names. I just saw all this aggression come out of you guys the last week or two. It seemed like you guys almost have real life beef as well. Is there anything there, or am I reading too far into it?
It's you got to remember, it's fantasy football. It's all in good, good form. But there might have been some cheap shots in there. But it's fantasy football. Plus, I think Devin is 4-4. Or 5-3, so it's we're evenly matched up going into playoffs. So I mean, it's probably the marquee matchup of the week for the league. So you have to take that into consideration too.
Yeah, I mean, I know Cam and I already recorded the podcast, but and you haven't heard it obviously because it isn't done yet. But we do have this pegged as our matchup of the week. for sure, just because of the bye week madness on both sides of the ball, as well as the trash talk, which has kept us all very entertained over the past couple of days. So I think we're all very much looking forward to this week.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. So were there any other points? Was there anything else you wanted to talk about specifically?
How would you rate the sleeper platform so far? Because I know I've heard from various people that they wish sleeper would improve or has features. There's something that's left to be desired.
I agree. There's definitely stuff left to be desired. I think that comes with the territory of investing in a startup. Basically, is what we've done. A completely independent platform. They call themselves Sleeper for a reason, because they're just kind of a platform that's coming out of nowhere and trying to make their way in a world filled with platforms made by these huge companies like Yahoo and ESPN. So I appreciate so many of the things that they've done, and just like it seems like almost every week, sometimes even multiple times a week, you just open that app and it's like, oh, here's all the updates. Like, here's a bunch of new features we're adding in, and just keep adding in more and more and more. And there are little glitches here and there, things that I wish we could change. Like I tweeted them specifically about a week ago, asking if there's a certain way we could have an actual double header happen in the week, as opposed to just doing it manually. And they responded within a day, and they're like, hey, maybe next year, basically. Like, we got a lot of stuff on our plate, which I respect. You're not going to get that tweeting to ESPN. But
sure.
I do enjoy it quite a bit. I like the game day look. I definitely see there are definitely things about ESPN that were probably better, but I feel like if we continue to spend time and have our league grow alongside the sleeper platform, I feel like we'll be on the cutting edge of what's new and exciting and what's good, and then eventually everyone's going to catch up behind us. What are your thoughts have been so far?
I think it's been fine. There are some things that have been missed from ESPN. I forget what the features were off the top of my head, of course. But it's been serviceable, and it seems to me that this platform, it isn't going to get any worse. I think that everything's going to be up from here. But if you had to distill it down, what would you say to the people that might be looking to migrate to a different platform next season, like to quell the concerns?
I mean, I just think you have to look at I guess you have to look at the pros and cons, and I feel like, to me, the pros have outweighed the cons, and I feel like the pros are only gonna increase, and the cons are only going to decrease. And if we were just to go to a different platform like Yahoo or back to ESPN, it's not like they're changing anything every year. It's just you get what you get, and if you're okay with that, I guess that's fine. But what attracted me to this platform was how they treated everything in pre-draft. Like how the draft board went, and how on ESPN you had to set a specific time, and you couldn't change the time within an hour for the draft. You had to set a specific draft time. You had to stick to it, and it's well, why do I have to do this? What if something happens? What if somebody gets delayed? As happens to you quite often, you end up being delayed to certain hangouts or events.
I see.
So, but Sleeper, it's just you can do it whenever. Who cares? And then at any moment, I could as what happens, I could pause the draft whenever I needed to. If there were trading involved, as we saw 4 different draft pick trading, which was not happening really on ESPN. I mean, Dylan and Cam did it once this prior season. But that kind of stuff, I live for that kind of stuff. That stuff's exciting. It's interesting. It adds another layer of strategy, which is what I love. So I feel like to the people who, it's really easy to look at a platform and point out all its flaws, and it's a little bit harder to see all of the good things as well. And I encourage people to look at the good things and not just focus on the flaws.
Sure, very reasonable.
Well, thank you for joining me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Once again, thanks for having me.
Of course. And yeah, if anyone else wants to have an interview on the podcast or be a part, just reach out to me or Cam, and we can get that going. But until then, back to me and Cam with the outro. All right, that was Justin. I'm sure he had interesting things to say.
What a great
Probably.
interview.
He usually has something to say. But yeah. So thank you for listening to that. Thank you, Justin, for participating. If any of you else want to do little interview segments or be a part of the podcast, just reach out to me. That'd be great. Alrighty, let's get into our mailbag section real quick. I have 2 questions written into me. The first one comes from Dylan, and he writes in, what is the most surprising team this year, given your preseason expectations? And I have my answer. And do you have yours, Cam?
Yeah, I do. Mine is, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Actually, Austin Lassiter.
Yeah,
last
that was mine
season.
as well.
Yeah, he was pretty solid team. He upset Devin in the first round of playoffs to throw him down into the losers area with Justin. And we thought that he could have a solid team this year with his keepers and second overall pick. But wow, he has definitely not lived up to those expectations.
Yeah, he's just had some interesting snafus with the whole Josh Gordon thing and some injury. And yeah, I mean, I feel like we've been beating a dead horse with Lassie's team the last couple of weeks. So just not what we expected going into the season at all. Mm-hmm. And I have another question here from Devin, and I assume this one is directed towards you, but it says, how does it feel to get played on the waiver wire?
I know, I think Devin would know this one better than me, getting bodied with Ryan Fitzpatrick when I bid the exact same amount as him and won him from him. Like, Devin, come on, man, you had so much fab, couldn't spring another $1 to just try and keep me down? Come on.
Yeah. Thank you all once again for listening to our Halloween-themed edition of the Annual Bacam Fantasy Football Podcast. I have been Frankie.
This is Cam.
And next week we'll come back to you with another weekly recap, do our usual stuff. Thank you all for listening, and good luck on your matchups this week to everyone besides for Dylan.
Retweet on that Dylan one.
And stay safe this on Halloween and the subsequent weekend, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
Peace out.